Well, first up, ratings agency Fitch has assigned 4 Nigerian banks with subsidiaries in Ghana a B- with stable outlooks. The banks are Access Bank, Guaranty Trust Bank, UBA, and Zenith Bank. According to Fitch, the banks are robust with strong buffers. However, they continue to contend with US dollar shortages, and the Central Bank of Nigeria's highly burdensome cash reserve requirement. Fitch therefore expects reform progress under the new administration, including the elimination of fuel subsidies and gradual liberalization of the naira. What are the implications of this rating? Dr. Benjamin Amwa, who is Senior Finance Lecturer at the University of Ghana Business School, joins us on Zoom. Good afternoon to you. Thanks for your time. So what does this mean for the banks, this B- with stable outlook?
Thank you very much. For the bank, we can look at it in two ways. We can look at the parent in Nigeria, which is the parent bank that more or less, has subsidiaries across Africa. We look at the 4 banks: GT Bank, Access Bank, Zenith, and UBA. Realize that is the parent's concentration of its investment in the sovereign instrument of Nigeria that is influencing the current performance, and the extent to which these banks are geographically, dispersed across Africa. What is rather showing from the report is that the performance of the Ghanaian subsidiary, i.e. the losses that some of the Ghanaian subsidiaries of these banks have made, is what we have negatively impacted on the group as a whole. So as the Nigerian economy picks up, these banks will have their books improved simply because of the strength of the Nigerian economy. The case of the Ghanaian banks or the Ghanaian subsidiaries of these banks are quite different from the current assessment from the parent level.
Yeah, and these banks are heavy weights, no doubt, here in Ghana, and whatever happens to them has an impact on our local banking industry because of their market share, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. So if you are looking at the contributions of these 4 banks in Ghana, then definitely whatever their position is per the exposures that these banks may have picked from their investment in Government of Ghana instrument will definitely impact on our market. But currently, the ratings that are coming from Fitch is more of an assessment of that of the parent. We should not also forget that the parents do have interest in all the subsidiaries across. So definitely, whatever happens to the parents will affect the subsidiaries, which will also affect the activities that the subsidiaries have on the Ghanaian market.
Okay, so Fitch notes that the banks have had to contend with US dollar shortages and the Nigerian central bank's burdensome cash reserve requirement, and so they have to fix that. And you point out that that is the parent company. Now the subsidiaries have to deal with another thing, which is debt restructuring, which has weighed on them. How do they navigate that?
Okay, so we have to look at it from this point. In Nigeria, the issue of the dollar and the naira is still an issue that the Nigerian government and central bank is working at. We should not forget that these subsidiaries in Ghana, from time to time, will need support from the parent, most especially when the central bank, Bank of Ghana, is calling for capital recapitalization plans, then definitely these banks will have to fall on the parent. So if the parents are not comfortable in terms of what is happening in Nigeria and across Africa, you see, the African economy is so fragile that post-COVID, most of these economies are trying to restructure their finances. So definitely banks that are operating on this continent are also exposed. So for these big banks from Nigeria, once they are affected in terms of the parents, then definitely they may also have some impact on the Ghanaian subsidiaries. So in the recapitalization plan that the Central Bank of Ghana is calling for, I believe that the parents who are in Nigeria currently for these 4 banks will definitely be impacted by some of the implications that the central bank's capitalization plan is calling for, and indirectly too, the experience of the parents in Nigeria will affect the operations of these subsidiaries in Ghana.
And so based on this, to what extent do you think these Nigerian banks will review how they operate here in Ghana, their approach when it comes to, for instance, lending and bond trading?
It depends on the philosophy of the parents of Nigeria, taking a holistic view of the African economy and which markets in Africa are promising. The example of Ghana doesn't speak well for the Ghanaian case because we have gone through debt restructuring and banks have suffered. The parent will want to look at other markets. Which market will promise them the more? And then they may want to put in more resources into such markets. For a market like Ghana, what a parent may want to do will just have to observe and make sure that they have their capital buffers intact for them to recover from some of these difficulties. In terms of what new to do for Ghana, is more of trying to stabilize their position in Ghana. To rake in more income, they may have to look at other markets that have promised higher returns than what Ghana currently presents to them.
All right. I appreciate your thoughts this afternoon, Dr. Benjamin Amoah, Senior Finance Lecturer at the University of Ghana Business School. Now, to our top story this afternoon, the Data Protection Commission has issued a public warning on data breaches by operators of online loan apps. The Data Protection Commission says it has received tons of complaints regarding the harassment and debt-shaming approaches these online digital loan services are using to deal with defaulters. The Commission says operators of the online apps, which are mostly unlicensed, are violating the country's data protection laws. Executive Director Patricia Eduse-Poku joins us on Zoom to tell us a bit more. Good afternoon to you. So tell us more about the nature of these complaints, and are you able to quantify them?
Thank you, Daryl. Good afternoon, and good afternoon to all your listeners. So, it's causing a lot of harm and distress in the ecosystem, the way these loan apps are collecting data from our data subjects across the country. And it's hard to quantify it, the extent of the damage beyond costs.
What is the role of the Commission in cases such as these?
So the Commission's major mandate is to protect the rights of individuals and their personal data. We are mandated to raise public awareness, which is why we are on TV today talking about it, educate the public and hold institutions accountable for the way they collect and use our data. There are principles in the Data Protection Act 2012, otherwise known as the Act 843, that dictates and guides institutions on how to collect legitimately and use the data. Data has a life cycle. From the point you're collecting, from the point you're collecting to when you finish using it, there are rules. The data subject is empowered to be contributing to the way the data is used in a way that meets their reasonable expectation. It is not sufficient to trick people into clicking some link online and agreeing to every thing that you say and then use the data as you wish. You are not, data controllers are not allowed to collect beyond the data that allows them to meet the service that they are, the service demands that they are providing to the individual. So if you're providing a loan, you only take enough information about the person for you to provide and service the loan. It's very bad for you to take pictures, contact videos, and basically zap all the information of the individual off their phone and use it at will to harass them at a later date. It is causing a lot of chaos in the ecosystem, and we are holding the Bank of Ghana and the Cybersecurity Authority accountable for being regulators for the financial ecosystem and for protecting critical national infrastructure respectively, to take big action to curb or to mitigate these risks for us?
Well, I've seen a couple of WhatsApp messages. I don't know how they do it, but then I have a couple of friends who own some of these online apps, and they've sent messages, details about some of my friends, and so I wonder how they're able to do this. But one would also say that the victims are not blameless because you've gone for a loan and you have to pay. What's your response to this?
So the fact that someone has come for a loan doesn't allow you to harass. There are financial sector rules around how debt management, credit facilities, and how you provide loans. There are strict rules around how this is done. There are international standards. The PCC, DSS tells us, it's called PSSD, the financial sector standards, tells us what people are allowed to do and not to do with financial data. These guys are online. They don't have a physical presence. They're not registered with the Bank of Ghana. They're going far beyond the scope of what they're allowed to do within the financial industry sector code of practice, and taking information beyond what is allowed. They are writing with red paint on people's walls in their homes. They are going there and knocking people's food off their cooker and fire and embarrassing them.
Circulating their Ghana cards
to their communities.
Yeah, I just added circulating their Ghana cards as well. And so
Exactly.
So what section of the Data Protection Act can bring relief to victims?
So the individuals are empowered to complain, ask for redress, to correct data, and the data controllers, those in this ecosystem that have collected the data, they are supposed to have collected legitimately. They are supposed to have explained at the point of collection the purpose for which they are collecting, which they may have done, but in small print. It has to be in plain enough language, and the consent that they get from this individual should be explicit consent, which means that the people should have been fully briefed and fully informed about how the data would be used against them, and they should have been given the opportunity to give an affirmative action to suggest that they are happy with the way the information will be used at the later date. People have a right to, when they are being harassed and distressed, to stop the processing of their data. Right now, all these rights have been infringed upon because the individuals haven't found a way to complain to these data controllers, the online loan app owners. Neither have we, the Commission, been able to track these defaulting institutions down to hold them accountable. All this is against the Data Protection Act, Section 46, that says that they must be registered with us, for example, and all the principles of data protection have been breached in this act.
Well, reading your statement is also significant to point out that most of these online loan services are unlicensed. Have you perused any of your privacy notices, the privacy notices of these loan services?
They haven't been very, very accountable to us or open to us concerning these privacy notices, and whatever they have on there, they themselves have gone against the principles of privacy statements. It's well beyond what they are allowed to do, and therefore, even if they have one on their attached to the app, it's beyond what is reasonably expected by any individual, and so it's a breach of their rights straight away. I know the Bank of Ghana and the Cyber Security Authority are working hard to eliminate some of these apps by disabling them, using their efforts and with collaborating with Google and all that. But we also have found out in our discussions with Bank of Ghana that as they disable them, new ones come up. So it's becoming a very overwhelming project for them to do, even in their capacity as the Cybersecurity and Bank of Ghana regulators.
And you've called on the cybersecurity units of the Bank of Ghana, the Cybersecurity Authority, and other agencies to rally efforts to fish out and apprehend the operators of these loan apps. What sanctions are they likely to face?
We've got all the members of the Joint Cybersecurity Technical Working Group, the national committee that oversees the critical national infrastructure, of which personal data is part of. to come on board with all their efforts. So we have the Bank of Ghana, we have the Cyber Security Authority, the police, the national security, and all the other critical stakeholders, the FIC, financial investigations, even the Yoko and all the others have been briefed and are doing whatever they can in their efforts to find these culprits and bring them to order.
And for the victims, what is the way forward for them, those who have come to the Data Protection Commission to complain about a breach of their personal information?
We are encouraging victims to come forward with the evidence of what they are experiencing. It's not to say that we have a solution immediately, because we haven't found any responsible individual physically to deal with and prosecute, as is within our mandate to do. However, we are compiling a dossier and sharing it with our peer regulators and the intelligence or investigators to try and find those in Ghana that are fronting these online apps, because we do know they are visiting people's homes in the night, they are harassing them, they are writing with pen.
Wow.
So the police and military and whoever have that capacity to do the investigations are on the alert, looking for some people in Ghana to arrest and to hold accountable for this problem.
Patricia Edusei-Poku is Executive Director of the Data Protection Commission. I appreciate your time with us this afternoon. Thank you so much. Well, let's turn to the Treasury market for some news. Government recorded about 6.4% oversubscription of its Treasury bills target of 2.63 billion cedis, but at an increasing cost. According to figures from the Bank of Ghana, interest rates surged for the 8th consecutive week, raising concerns about the government's debt management strategy aimed at cutting Ghana's debt. Patrick Edemagama is Head of Trading at Republic Security. He joins us with more. So some positive news from Friday, at least. The bills were oversubscribed. Give us a rundown, Patrick.
Well, on the money markets last week, the government raised 2.8 billion against a target of 2.6 billion, recording oversubscription. Again, all the bids were accepted across all the three securities. And again, most investors desired the 91-day Treasury bill against the others. We saw 53% of the bids going for 91-day, and then 38% going for 182-day Treasury bill, and then 9% going for 364-day bill. The 91-day cleared at 21.27, increasing by 11.16 basis points. The 182-day cleared at 29.95%, increasing by just 1.54 basis points. However, we saw a dip in the 364-day bill that closed at 27.82%, decreasing by 19.71 basis points.
And like I indicated my intro to this story, interest rates continue to surge for the 8th consecutive week, and now there are concerns about government's debt management strategy. How government aims to cut down on the country's debt. That's cause for why?
Well, if you look at the restriction of government to the capital market, you see that the Treasury bill remains the only option that the government will have to use to fund maturing bills and bonds. Again, for lack of variety of securities on the market, we see that investors keep throwing money at government because of the other options that are lacking. And also, if you look at the targets, if you look at the range, you see that the auction targets have been increasing lately, slightly higher than the requirement or the needs that the government have. This is also is simply because the government is trying to prepare for upcoming coupons in the future. We have the first coupons for the new bonds coming in August. So we expect that the government needs to prepare towards those coupons.
And let's turn to the stock market. How is trading faring over there?
Well, in the stock market, we can see that last week we saw some gains in GGBL, MTN, and FanMilk. We saw EGL, that's Enterprise Group, and SIC dropping some pesos. We are again seeing a lot of demand on the market for CarBank, FanMilk, and MTN. MTN is mounting again and again. We expect this to continue for some time. However, we are seeing significant selling pressures in banking stocks.
All right. Thank you so much, Patrick Edemagama, Head of Trading, Republic Securities. Ghana's program with the International Monetary Fund has received the buy-in from all social actors, including organized labor. That's according to country rep of the IMF, Dr. Leandro Medina. There are fears that the government will struggle to implement the program because of the expected opposition from these interest groups, but Dr. Medina telling us that is not an issue at all. Meantime, the IMF visiting team is expected to engage more stakeholders this week as part of meetings. Here's more from George Affe.
The team has been in town since last week, and this is part of what they want to describe as regular country engagement. But for some, this visit has come at a time that Ghana has a full program with the IMF to try and turn around the economy. So apart from the regular people that the IMF want to meet, they also want to interact with other interest groups. They believe that this will help them bring all these persons to the table and capture their concerns as part of the IMF program. The staff visit will also help the team track how Ghana is doing to meet the program objectives and progress as expected to meet those key program targets by the end of June this year. This is because when the team meets on November 1, 2023 for Ghana's first program review, they'll be looking at the June 30 quantitative and qualitative targets to see whether Ghana has been able to achieve them. Now, passing these targets will let the staff take their recommendation to the IMF board for approval and disbursement of additional $600 million for Ghana. Some have said this first review is very important because it will help Ghana realize the full benefits of this IMF program in terms of turning around the economy. The visiting IMF staff should leave town for Washington, D.C., USA, before the close of this week.
Some more news for you. Event vendors are concerned about the impact of utility tariff hikes and inflation on the operations. The Event Vendors Association indicates the current exchange rate regime is not favorable, causing great distress within the space. President of the association, Kate Hassan, has been speaking to Joy Business.
We are still trying to bounce back and do what we know how to do best.
Okay, now let's talk about how did it affect the industry for you?
It affected us massively because looking at, when it comes to events, we have the logistic companies who supplies us to do our events. The dollar, the foreign exchange rates, everything. Duties, taxes they all went up, and it really affected our industry. For instance, we used to do events events for guests between, our highest was up to 1,000, but last year our highest was 300, and some of them even cut up to 50. You get an event with 300 guests, and by the time on the D-day of the event or a week or two before the event, the client will come back and say, I'm having issues with money and all that, so we have to cut down to the number of guests. We can't do it anymore, and it really affected us to the extent that those who even pulled out of their 8-to-5 jobs had to go back, and it's been difficult to come back to do into the industry. So it hasn't been easy, and it's still not easy. We are still trying to find our feet, but just like you said, everything that goes on in our society, it's events, so we are trying to do our very best to still stay in our industry and support the country as a whole or the society.
All right, Johnny Walker, the world's #1 Scotch whisky brand, has announced that red label and black label will no longer come in cardboard packaging as part of a wider packaging strategy with focus on reduce, reuse, and recycle. Here's more in this report.
The removal of cardboard packaging across Johnny Walker Black Label and Red Label will not only reinforce the brand's commitment to championing sustainability and building Ghana's circular economy, but also contribute to eliminating over 7,000 tons of carbon from Diageo's supply chain. The Stepping Out of the Box campaign is a step forward in the direction of achieving Society 2030. Estela Muzito said through this initiative, over 100 million cardboard packaging will be phased out globally, representing 50% of total Scotch cardboard individual bottle cartons.
We've started, very seriously putting in our best effort to really drive the conversation around environmental conservation. So last year, we made a decision globally, as a #1 Scotch whiskey, to start reducing some of our packaging. You know very well that the boxes that we pack in some of our brands, have to come from trees. And we felt, one of the first steps to really reducing on our carbon footprint was to start rethinking our packaging. So the next thing that we thought about as a team was, what else could we do on the ground to really, really show how serious we are about the environment? And so that's why we are here today. We said, what? Why not contribute to the, tree planting agenda? This year we're talking about planting 10 million trees. And as Johnny Walker, we're never scared of a challenge. And so we're here to also contribute to that as a team and as a business. And we'll continue doing more things, talking about engaging with different stakeholders within the environmental conservation space. And we hope to do this more. We know it's the right thing to do as a brand, and it's the right thing to do for our consumers as well.
On her part, Corporate Relations Director for Guinness Ghana, Sylvia Owusu-Ankuma, urged Ghanaians to be deliberate in tackling the issues of climate change to reduce its impact on human life.
And that's our program this afternoon. Thanks for watching, everyone. More news on our website, myjoyonline.com/business. We will be back same time tomorrow.